Hello. It is Kate,
It is David.
Is Jordan.
and we are going to give you our long overdue but fairly short review of Saw 10 or Saw X.
Saw X.
Saw X.
And we hope everyone had a happy Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Thank you to all of our veterans that serve and protect. God bless you all.
Indeed. So, who wants to give a little bit of background about where this fits in the Saw mythology? Because while it is
Jordan.
the 10th in the series, it actually takes place earlier on, correct?
It's supposed to be set after the second film. Is that what we gather?
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and kind of give a rundown what basically they were building this movie up to be. They weren't necessarily promoting it, but I kept hearing things like, I don't know, from the studio or whatever, that this film takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2.
That's what I was thinking.
And so, in my opinion, this is just our opinion. So don't go all ballistic, even if you are completely wrong. Little nod to the nostalgic critic.
There you go. Right. Yeah.
So anyway, back to what I was
Don't
saying.
overreact.
They said this film takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2, but I really didn't see that in this film, because if it did happen between, Saw 1 and Saw 2, you would think this type of story would have been brought up in the other films, like in Saw 3, 4, 5, 7, and so forth. But I don't necessarily. I think it kind of plays out on its own. And this was the only Saw film that didn't show no flashbacks at all, which was pretty surprising, because there's always a flashback in every single Saw film. But it's really hard to, see how this takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2 when the characters have aged like how many years?
Suspension of disbelief, but also, I guess you could also kind of say, in a way, this movie is like a 90-minute plus flashback in itself.
Yeah, that's basically all it is.
So, to give a rundown of the plot, it is a Saw film, so
You know what you're getting into.
pretty much. So, in this film, what is John
Kramer.
John Kramer is sold a cure to his brain cancer, which turns out to be a scam. And so he captures and proceeds to go through the Saw game with the people who perpetrated the scam, as well as his accomplice. Well, he has his accomplice, Amanda,
the first accomplice.
Yes. Shawnee, reprised with Shawnee Smith,
Mm-hmm.
who has arguably one of the worst haircuts I've seen in modern film.
It was Mo Howard, I think, that they based that on.
Yeah, that was not
the fishbowl
not a good
haircut.
one.
Yeah, and if it takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2,
She sure got
especially after Saw 2, her hair looked really different.
She aged a lot in those.
Her and Tobin Bell,
months.
literally, it looks like they aged like 10 years apart from movies that's supposed to take place between one and the other.
You kind of got to watch that if you're going to do this kind of thing.
So that's one thing that kind of threw me off there.
Yeah. But then, I mean, from there, was there anything much to say about the plot? It unfolds as a basic.
Well, it started with him. I gather this was. I thought it was going to be John Kramer centric, because it started with him going after these people who had wronged him. After you get through that little bit at the beginning, and it seems like it's really going to be something intricately plotted and so forth, but it's not really. It just. And before you know it, it dovetails back into the same kind of revenge and splatter movie that we've all seen.
It's a good revenge film.
It is very much a direct revenge film after that.
It's basically a revenge film in my opinion.
Yeah, but you've got all of the victims in one location, so it really does begin just being like a slasher film without any suspense.
Right.
Because you know that somebody's gonna get it next, but they're literally all in the same room. So, I will say at one point I did lean over to David and say this film is boring.
As a man was,
I was getting that exact same feeling too. And I'm thinking, where in the world is this happening between Saw 1 and Saw 2? I don't see it. Yeah. It's like a completely different new movie. This is what they need to do. This is what Lionsgate Films needs to do. They need to start, if they want to continue this series, you need to start picking up where the last film left off. Now, this is spoiler alert city. I know we've kind of mentioned a lot about the film so far, but we're going to major spoiler alert system right now. So you have 5 seconds to either quit watching or we're just going to spoil it for you.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So basically, after the ending of Saw, my opinion, the last actual good Saw film, which was Saw 3D, the final chapter, it leaves with Dr. Gordon being announced as Jigsaw's accomplice, and who actually captures Detective Hoffman, who actually ends up killing Jigsaw's widow, and and he is chained to the iconic bathroom from the Saw series, and we are just left at that. Now, if they were to make a new film, we would see a little bit more of Dr. Gordon, and would Hoffman escape the bathroom? We don't know. But if that was basically impossible, then they should just stop the series right there because it seriously had the best ending ever. It was the perfect ending if to this series. When you call it the final chapter, that ending sold it really well. The way it ended, it was just perfect, and they should have just never made any more Saw films after that, in my opinion.
Well, they really wrung this property dry, I think is how you put it. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess, I mean, the studios, if they find something that makes any money, they will milk it until they can barely.
I just don't know what else you can tell.
Yeah,
Like, my God.
yeah.
No.
Like everything, in my opinion, has just been told.
Well, and I guess that's why they thought they'd go back and do a prequel or something because they kind of ran out of they run out of steam like with where to go.
Yeah.
They could have done like a traditional detective story here or something like that.
Well, that's when they did Spiral.
Oh, that was Spiral.
Yeah, that was the detective movie, which in my opinion I was not a
That
huge
was
fan
not
of.
that good.
I haven't seen it, and I have no desire to see it.
I
No-
saw it, and it was not good.
Well, there you go.
Well, they should have been. They should have
saved me 90 minutes.
They
Yes.
should have written a good detective story, basically, because you'd think, something like that.
Like nothing against Chris Rock, but I just can't picture him being a
He
detective.
was not a good detective.
But Samuel L. Jackson, I can see.
He was underplayed or underused in that.
Yeah.
The twist was way too obvious. Which spoiler alert for Saw Spiral, which came out like a few years ago. So if you haven't seen it now, in a movie, in a series like Saw, where the whole thing is predicated on gruesome deaths, if someone gets killed off screen, major red flag. Like that's like
Yeah, that's not
that's
necessarily
the guy.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the Saw formula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the first movie was very suspenseful, and they kind of set it up. I mean, it was
different.
It
Yeah,
was
different.
really different.
It
I
had
absolutely
stomach-tightening moments,
love
but
the first film.
Yeah, and it was something new. Like Jordan's pointed out many times before, it was something you hadn't seen before, really.
Yeah.
And this time, I think they didn't really know how to write this movie.
No.
And the other problem too is he's an interesting character. And
Yeah.
Tobin Bell does give a great performance as far
Yeah,
as
really great. I
Yeah.
think this is probably his best performance because John Kramer shows a lot of emotion in this film. Like throughout the rest of the films, you don't see him like cry or anything like that.
Yeah.
But in this film, man, he really brings a lot of emotion to the John Kramer character, which I love. I thought it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Well, they
You see a
managed to-
different side of him, but
He's human after
yeah,
all.
yeah, he's human.
And he gets sold. Having your hopes crushed is probably one of the worst things that humans can experience.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and he was, as we were talking about earlier, he was expecting. I'm not spoiler alert, I guess, but he was expecting death anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, he was wanting that, and this is just something that. But I thought the ending was a little bit over the top. I don't have to spoil it by telling
Yeah.
you what it is, but it's a little with a little kid. I mean, that was a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird.
It's a little. Yeah, I don't think it was necessary. I mean, it seems weird to, I guess criticize these movies for gratuitousness, but it was a little bit needless. I think. I did think if they would have gotten into his psychology more and told the story a little differently. I mean, that's not what people go to see a Saw movie for, but I think that
Yeah, they just go to see,
Yeah,
all the really cool traps and how these people are going to die.
yeah, and then
Which, don't get me wrong, the
bloody
traps in
carnage.
this movie are really over the top and they're really well done. And that's one thing that I like, how they just keep bringing up all these new ideas, for traps and
For the
stuff like
effects of
that.
it and so forth. But I mean, other than that, it didn't really. I don't feel like we learned a lot or a lot was revealed about
Yeah,
these
it,
characters.
it kind of feeling a little empty
Yeah,
after
it
that.
was.
Like, oh, that's it. Oh,
But then
okay.
the last part, hey, you'll talk about the post credit sequence. that
Yes,
that
I
just
do want to
handles it
talk about
brilliantly.
that because John Kramer is actually introduced to this new kind of treatment from, was it a friend? I don't know.
I think
I,
it was. Or no,
it's
they
been,
were in a support group. They
yeah,
were
they
in a
were. Yeah,
cancer
it's somebody
support
from a
group
support
together.
group who
He,
tells John Kramer like, "Hey,
they became
this
friends, I
is
guess,
how I got healed,
for a
of this
time.
cancer. Give them a call. They'll
Right,
set you up and all that stuff." But when we
right,
come to find out it's a huge scam, you think, and then when the movie's over, we're like, "What happened to that guy that told him about the treatment?"
right.
And then one of my favorite shots in the whole movie, you see the lights turn on in that iconic bathroom. Like, oh, here we go. Here's the bathroom scene. Awesome. I've been waiting for this. And it shows him chained up, and you got John Kramer and Detective Hoffman in there telling them how full of crap he was, and then I forgot how they kill him.
There's a real nasty looking thing that's going to eat at his stomach. I think.
That's right.
It's a
Yeah.
real. Some of these look like they're a little fantastical. Some of these these devices, let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this movie would not bring in any new fans of this franchise. I'm
No, I
sorry
don't
to say,
know.
but I mean, but really, like the second movie that Jordan showed me was I liked that one. I thought the second one had a
I
lot of
love the second
suspense
one. Yeah.
and it did. I mean, it did have the requisite violence and stuff, but I didn't think it was really that over the top. I thought they did a good job sticking to the story
Yeah.
with the second film. So I was kind of hopeful that this would be like another exploration of this guy's fractured psyche and so forth. But instead, it just kind of went back into formulaic territory after the second reel. I think overall it was disappointing in many ways. And I
Yeah.
think, like Jordan saying, if they can't figure out what to do from here, it might be best to just
I think it's
end the
just my
franchise.
my opinion. I think that they just need to let it rest and leave it at that. I
Yeah.
mean, because the Saw franchise is probably one of my favorite horror like franchises to this day, like
Mhm.
in more modern times, because each film from first to the seventh one were all well done. They played really good stories. They had really good stories to them, and all the flashbacks, made sense. And like I said, I just feel like they just need to let this series rest. And
Is it time to say game over?
it is game
now,
over.
now you like now
Absolutely.
you like the first film.
I saw the first film in
Yeah.
theaters.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever watched it after that.
Well,
And I
Yeah, I
saw
didn't
I've
see.
seen
saw it.
I've seen them
You saw one saw.
sporadically.
Yeah.
I have seen at least 4
Oh,
saws,
okay. You saw four saws.
but
Okay.
not in consecutive order. Like I
Oh,
don't think I've seen like Saw 3 or Saw 4.
but you did like the first film.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
Yeah,
it was different.
yeah. You
It was
definitely gotta.
shocking.
Yeah,
It
you
was
definitely gotta watch them. In order from
Well,
first
and you
to
don't the first movie like you don't expect Carrie Elwes and Danny Glover to be in it either because
no, because they were on such a low budget. Because that film,
yeah
the first film was actually shot in 18 days.
yeah that was crazy fast, and they had a really good concept for the first one. I mean that's hard to deny that. I mean it's not
It
everybody's cup
started
of
out
tea.
as a short film.
Yeah, I think
Actually,
it
that
did. Yeah,
that James Wan and Lee Winnell
yeah.
had done themselves.
They might have had to do that to sell the investors on
Yeah,
it.
they did. They did that. They did that short film to pitch to
Yeah.
studios.
Yeah. And they got somebody to take it, didn't they? Was it
Yeah,
Lionsgate or
yeah. It was Lionsgate.
okay, they took it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was a good concept, but I think once you stretch something so far like a rubber band, it's going to break after a while. And
Right.
I mean, it's fun to stretch it, 3 or 4 times, and after that, you probably better quit. Whereas
Yeah.
because
So
I don't know if there's any place else they could possibly take this
I don't
franchise.
know how else they can do it unless
Yeah.
unless you continue what happened after Saw 3D. That's my only way of trying to continue with the story. Like what happened to Detective Hoffman? Did he escape the bathroom? Did this happen? That's how I see it.
Yeah.
So Lionsgate, game over.
okay.
Over.
So out of would we usually do 5 stars,
I think we do
4 stars?
5, or do you do 4? Well, we could do 4
We'll do
either.
5 stars.
I
So
think we do
Do
5
five.
so
stars.
what do you give it?
1.5.
Okay.
It was a bit, I knew what I was getting into, but even then, it really, I shouldn't feel bored, and I did.
Yeah. David?
Well, I would give it at least 2 because I did think that Tobin Bell was. I mean, he's a really strong actor. I thought that was good. I think the music was pretty good in it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because we
Um,
get that iconic
yeah,
theme by Charlie Clouser
yeah. I don't.
at the very end.
I feel like the cast, put in some effort.
Yeah.
So I don't. I mean, it wasn't totally bad, but I don't. But like I said, there's not a great deal to recommend it beyond Tobin Bell's acting because I mean, you've seen a lot of it before, and you've seen, like Kate said, you know what you're getting into, and it's not everybody's cup of meat, as Bob Dylan would put it. So I think, yeah, I would say 2 though for the effort that was involved. I don't think it was I don't think it was like the worst. I mean, I didn't feel that it was intentionally boring. I think like I wasn't bored by it as much as Kate was, but then again, it's not really, it's not a, it's just it's either it's not everybody's thing, like I was trying to say. But I think there was a lot of effort put into it by the cast and by the crew. So, but I can only give it 2 because I don't think there was a lot there. You know, Jordan.
Well, I'm going to give it 3.5. I'll give it 3.5 because I thought Tobin Bell put on an amazing performance. It was definitely a cool story, but it kind of failed trying to fit in between the first and second one because I really got confused on that. I just don't see how I don't see how this seems to fit in to Saw 1 and Saw 2. Then there was no flashbacks or anything like that. So Tobin Bell put on an amazing performance. He's such a great actor. I think he should be nominated for an Academy Award after that one. But the horror genre really doesn't give him that chance unless it's Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, the
Anyway,
Academy doesn't
yeah,
Yeah.
the Academy really doesn't look at horror that much. So anyway, and I thought Shawnee Smith put on a good performance. The traps were really cool. They were really well done. It was an okay story, but it just left me feeling kind of empty. I really wish they could have did a little bit more with it. So I give it 3.5. It was still good, but I don't know. I just think they just need to quit making these films. My opinion.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us for our Saw X review, and we will be back with another review as soon as all three of us can find time in our schedules to get
To see
together.
another
So,
movie.
yes.
Subscribe to our channel. Comment what you all think below, and
Leave your comments beneath.
yeah,
We'll see you
Yeah.
next time.
let's talk
Oh,
horror.
wow.
Oh, yeah, we should probably
Oh,
say
let's
what
talk
we are.
horror,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's talk horror.